Hi there, everyone. My name is Isabel Garcia. I am your host of Parenting Plus, and in this series, we do a deep dive into topics impacting moms, dads, grandparents, kids, families of all shapes and sizes. And I'm very honored and excited to have a special guest with me here today for this installment. We have Dr. Traci C Terrance. She is an assistant professor at URMC's Departments of Psychiatry, Family Medicine, CTSI, and she is also the clinician and associate director of the Integrated Behavioral Health Practice at Highland Family Medicine. So quite an incredible quantity of hats that you certainly wear, Dr. Traci, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And so I'm really eager to jump into our topic for today. And so viewers can see it here now. I know we were talking right before we started getting rolling on the recording, but just in terms of the longevity that we've already had and such a long year now that it's February, but just a lot of moving parts happening in the world. We're seeing a lot happen, in our country. I have two kids. I have a daughter who's 7 and a son who's 5. And so, while the world events and things, in just day-to-day kind of activities, happen in the world, and we're seeing this, just I guess in terms of the state of what's been happening, how would you start to address this with first, whether it's parents or kids, however you want to start?
Sure. Just again, appreciating being here. It is such an important topic and such a challenging time that we're in, one that we probably, I don't know, many people who would ever thought we would be here in 2026. So super important. I'll start with parents, really. As a parent myself, I was sharing before we started that I have a 13-year-old at home. And just when I think about what's happening and how to talk about those things with our kids, no matter what age, I'd say, first and foremost, the discussion is going to be different, of course, depending on the age of the child. But one of the things, as I was thinking about coming here today, I often hold this acronym, the word love, which is something that we need more of in the world. So I'll start with that. But when I think of this word, in my practice, love, the L stands for listening first. I have a close friend of mine who often reminds me, let's not come up with the answers until we get clear on what the questions are. So I'm like, yes, good reminder. Yes. So if we start really by listening, what's on their mind? What's on their heart? What sense are they making of what they might be seeing or maybe what they heard at school? And let's start there. So starting with L, listening. Then the O is being open. Lots of what they might bring to us, it can make us feel, are we uncomfortable ourselves? Sure. Do we start to question maybe some of the things that we were thinking? So how do we just stay open to what it is they are bringing to us when we start to listen? And then the V is just making room for their voice, right? As we listen, as we stay open, it encourages them naturally to just say more, talk more, because then they don't feel that they've been shut down. If we start to put what we think and what we want them to believe in there, then they can start to retreat a little bit and not say as much. So voice is important.
Absolutely.
And then last but not least, that E. So expect that it'll be a little bit messy, that we won't get it as parents perfect. We want our kids to be well. We want them to be safe. We want them to have both the things that we didn't have and the things that we do have. So just expect to maybe not get it right the first time, but there's always this opportunity to go back. Hey, I remember when we were talking about this earlier and you said this, it made me think about that. So we always have the opportunity to circle back and just go from there.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love that. And that's certainly something that's easy to remember, you know, in
Yes.
those moments. Because I find, you know, in my parenting journey so far, you know, it's often, you know, encouraged that, you know, whether it's the struggle of getting out the door, whatever it might be, whatever the challenge of the moment is, to essentially practice those things when you're not in a heightened nervous system state or things like that, which is often difficult to remember. But that, I feel like that's such an easy tool to use and put in your toolbox to say, okay, love, listen, and
Be open, voice,
and expect.
just
Expect the mess.
Yes,
I love
expect
that.
the messiness.
And in terms of if we can spend some time just kind of chunking out for the different age range,
Sure.
and I thought it was beautiful, you know, as you mentioned too, and the importance of not just, you know, expressing everything that, you know, our feelings, you know, and what we're seeing, you know, to them, to our children, but really, you know, what they're hearing and observing and learning at school or experiencing, and then how to make sense of that. And also, as you mentioned too, which I think is so beautiful and important to remember, that parents don't have all the answers. And sometimes I think we put that pressure on ourselves that we're supposed to, because we have this child that expects us to, you know, have all the answers. And so I think that being open, you know, with your child to say, oh, let's explore that more, or whatever that might be, and just that curiosity. But in terms of, I guess, if you wanted to work maybe backwards, you know, I think that the teenage conversation, you know, there's, of course, you know, more brain development. They have, you know, different exposure to, you know, different lessons and things like that over the years. But in terms of just the state of the world and what's happening, and talking to, you know, your team maybe, or teenagers in general, how would you approach that conversation?
Yeah, sure. Great question. When I think about the older teens, when we bring kind of this love aspect, listening and welcoming their voice, and we also want to, they're in a position where they can be challenged to think critically about this. So how do the conversations that we have with, especially some of the teenagers, older teens, how does that help them start to be curious and think about what are my values? You know, what's important to me? What kind of person do I want to be in the world? So I think there's certainly room for a bit of a challenge for some of the teenagers to take on as you're watching this. What does that make you feel? What does it make you think? And what do you want to do about that? Whether it is, you know, some sort of community service in their own community, or making sure when they turn 18, I think, registering to vote and being civically engaged when we're at the younger ages.
Yes.
So let's say, you know, that school age, 5 to 12-ish, maybe. We want to think about that social and emotional learning piece of it. So, you know, being able to identify, name some of the things that they're feeling is super, super important. And also realizing too that you don't have to feel just one thing.
Yes.
There's part of me that feels really sad about this, and part of me that feels really angry. And both of those things are okay. So really just kind of helping with feelings, naming, identification, and expressing, and that there isn't just one thing, because this is so complex. So to feel more than one thing, really, it just makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I recall that from a Daniel Tiger episode when my kids were even really, really little. But of course, the
Daniel
Mr.
Tiger.
Rogers neighborhood, you know, the lessons there that are so, you know, rooted in such truth that, you know, you don't have to just identify with one feeling or happen. I mean, we're, you know, multidimensional people and experience a lot of, and so do kids. And they really have the capacity to feel all of those, the range of emotions at the same time.
For sure. And then I think younger than 5, it really just becomes kind of shielding them. I think they're just at an age that we have to try to protect as much. And a lot of that comes with how do we take care of ourselves?
Yes.
How much are we taking in when it comes to whether we're looking at social media or watching the news or just taking in a lot of the distressing images and information, that we can limit ourselves so that we're able to be present for the people around us. So yeah, I think that self-care piece really comes in all the way through, and especially when they're young children.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of that insight. And I think it's so valuable and so important to remember to circle back to the things that, you as the parent, have control over. And, as we were mentioning, before the recording as well, just the kind of timeline that we're seeing of, parents in this moment. And this is honestly really just a pivotal moment. I think that parents are really, engaged and, have said, and I've seen, that parenting is often can be political and has been and is and continues to be, but with just kind of the cusp of, this next generation coming up, and, we're still seeing, more news break of what, has been, kind of institutionalized norms for so many years. I mean, it was just last Friday, we're recording this on a Tuesday, when it was the 3 million plus files released of the Epstein files from the DOJ. And, when it comes to parents checking in with themselves and being able to gauge, again, when you're kind of having that overwhelmed moment, what are some tools that you can convey that you work with, with clients in terms of how to regulate the nervous system? Because I know, and you said too, as the LOVE acronym, you're not always going to get it right, but what are some ways that we can kind of retrain our nervous system, if you will?
Sure, absolutely. Taking some, just even if it's a few minutes of downtime. One thing that I often find myself saying is, to down-regulate our nervous systems, we have to be intentional with our attention. So what am I paying attention to? How, and being aware, how is that making me feel in this moment? And if I'm noticing some level of distress, turn it off, put it down, take a step back, take a deep breath, just take a moment. I think the 5 senses are so powerful. What am I seeing? I see these beautiful colors in this room right now, and, I could feel the chair that is supporting me. I don't have to do anything to make that chair support me. It just holds me up. So just kind of
observing, really taking the observation.
Absolutely. If I'm taking a drink of water, just take a moment. Let me feel that water in my mouth and take a slow, sip of it. So just really, because it's
slowing down.
Slowing down because everything is so sped up right now.
It is, yes.
It's just sound bite, and to just slow ourselves down. So intentional with our attention.
I absolutely love that. And I think that kids, honestly, really teach us that in ways that, I mean, it's, almost in a forced manner, but I mean, really, and just to appreciate, and again, shift the attention to, and I wanted to circle back to, again, that LOVE acronym and how to maintain too. So when, if we're, cause I definitely will, take this back, for, my husband and I to incorporate, with our kids. And I think just is such a great tool to use. But when you're trying to listen to what, their concerns or what they're learning, and, whether or not it doesn't necessarily always have to be negative, but how to then use that and make sure that they feel listened to. How can, what are some ways that parents can, acknowledge or help to encourage their kids, that we do hear you and we hear these concerns, and then, you still have to get out the door for school.
Yes, right.
I know. Being able to still move through, some of the emotions and stuff, or if it's challenging, things like that, and how to, differentiate all of those feelings, if you will.
Right. I think honestly, exactly what you just said. It's acknowledging in the moment when there are big feelings or they're saying things that sound really hard. That sounds really hard, and when I hear you say it, I feel like this. What do you feel like? And so, can we, maybe there's an agreement in there. If it's at the start of the school day and you have to send them off, maybe we could talk about this when you get home today. And I think the power of circling back, it tells people that we've been thinking about them. Like, so, I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about what you said. The fact that we're remembering it and we're coming back to it, it signals to someone that was important. Oh, okay.
Value, right. I wanted to follow up on that. And I was really hearing you and showing them, listening, reflected back. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also touch on too, as we were talking about just tools for parents, and I've seen also just essentially this kind of growing involvement, as you mentioned, for the kind of older kids as well, being more civically engaged. But when it comes to, parents, whether or not you have young kids or old kids or whatever they might be, but, in this moment, what people can do. And I've seen a lot of psychologists and a lot of experts I've spoken with here that have said, taking action is really a good antidote to that kind of stuck feeling.
Sure.
And so obviously that comes with, as every child is different, every person's different. And so, the ability, to do those things might look different. And so, you mentioned volunteering, with your community, but what are some other ways that parents can kind of shift their mindset to understand how they are, contributing or the power that they do really have to have an influence over their kids?
Yes, super important to think about, what is within my control, and then there's everything else, So, when it comes to what are the needs in my community, I've heard one of the recent things that I heard from someone is that they I'm losing my words here. They put their hold snacks, leftover snacks and food. They kind of have it in their car. And then if they drive up and see, there's an unhoused person who may have a need, they have it right there just to hand out. And they've gotten their kids into the practice of, we have extra and we're just going to have it on the ready. And if we happen to see someone along our path that needs something, we'll just hand it over. And then you have people who look for just specific activities to get involved in. I think, power of parents, the power of people just gathering, getting together. Number one, there's validation in that, I'm not the only one who feels this way or sees this. So to find, whether it's a group of friends or even a group of strangers, to be able to just connect with, that relationship is super important. So it's a time where we could easily feel afraid and feel isolated because of that fear. And so, again, being intentional about whether it is a religious or spiritual practice or community after school group at your kid's school, or lots of schools kind of do things. I had someone whose school recently did like an ice skating gathering with the kids.
That's fun.
And, so just, I think the power of connection during a time. And honestly, I think this is even since COVID, we've really just felt very disconnected. And it's a time where we need community. We need one another. So
absolutely. And we have such an incredible community right here where we are. And I know that this can, go to different markets, but in terms of, every community has those incredible organizations that are just really doing the work. And when it comes to, either volunteering or engaging, with kids, you mentioned the story that I think is just so beautiful, just to see the, habit that also opens up a conversation, for kids to say, this is what we have, this is what somebody else that has a different experience, but being able to have those conversations and go deeper. And in terms of being able to have those practices with your kids, but not feel like, oh, this is another task I have to check off. How can parents, remember, and you said even circling back, but, if you feel, I guess, timeline wise or just being able to, I've heard the, essentially the lessons to chunk it out, right?
Yeah.
And that will help establish that kind of repeated connection with your kids. But I'll give an example. You know, my daughter is less inclined to talk about feelings compared to my 5-year-old son, who was very, very much so been, you know, on the track in terms of the social emotional learning. But just topically, you know, when you meet that resistance, you know, what I guess would be your words of encouragement for parents that are trying, but maybe not, you know, quite getting through or feel like they're not doing enough?
Yeah, I there is a lot of power in them seeing us do the thing, even if they're standoffish, if they're not necessarily sure, do I want to be a part of this? So it's important for each family to consider what's important for me, what's important for us as a unit. What do we want to teach? So it is, you know, how do we build kindness? How do we, you know, just support along the way? And so, sure, we never want to feel like we're forcing our kids to engage in something that is important to us. But if it still matters to us, I think it's important for us to still do the thing. And as they're seeing us be committed to a certain thing or things, they'll come along eventually. It may not, and this is where that whole and expect that it would be messy, right?
Because the is important.
Because we want them, like, we're committed to it. We want them to feel the same way, but we also have to remember it probably took us some time to get to wherever we've landed today. And so how do we kind of honor our own journey and realize too, and I'm saying this to myself as a mother now, honor my own journey and respect that, you know, there are aspects, at least for my daughter, that will be the same and some that will be different. And so let me just take some breaths on that one.
Yes, you are not the only person in that chair that has, you know, really, you know, reflected the need to just give yourself grace. I mean, for every parent out there, I mean, it's such a challenging time. You know, obviously, as you mentioned too, you know, with the COVID pandemic, I mean, you know, parents during that time period, just the isolation, it was so extreme. And I think that, I know for me anyway, personally, you know, I had my son in 2020, he's 5 now, and it took me time actually when I moved here to learn how to be around, you know, people again and interact, and these skills that I very much so felt like I had. And I just think that, you know, all these lessons that you gave are just so valuable and so practical really to use, and doesn't feel as much pressure. And we'll definitely take that LOVE acronym for sure. I appreciate all of the insight. In terms of, I guess, just any parting words that you might have for, you know, kids, parents out there, just navigating, you know, we're in the early stages of February, but, you know, any kind of parting words, you know, as we kind of navigate the next steps in this year.
Sure. I mean, of course, remember love. I think the remembering slowing down, you know, a conversation I find myself having over and over again with people is, you know, we know that the state of the world, it's having an impact on us. And we don't know what that impact is or what it will be. But when people say, you know, I'm tired and I can't get to go exercise the way that I used to, it's just like, yes, just the validation of, it's been a long year, just the way you said it. And just, you know, that sense of connection, community, hearing people, slowing down, taking care of yourself. I think those are the things that I'd leave us with. We just all need some gentleness and some kindness. So I'll leave that.
Most certainly love. And thank you so much for all of those insights and those efforts. And we'll put all the information in terms of, you know, resources and stuff with this article on our website. And we also wanted to thank you all so much for tuning in for this installment of Parenting Plus. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.